welcome back. Well, as I said before, inflation numbers for June, we're expecting that later today. For May, it was 33.95%. What's going to come for June? We'll get a sense of that and what to expect for the Naira this week. We have Damilare Shimi, who's a macroeconomic strategist, AfriInvest. Join me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning, Laddie. Thanks for having me.
So definitely it's all about inflation at this point. We want to know if we can actually see some kind of cooling, at some point. We've seen all the rate hikes in the first half of 2024, but inflation still remains high. What are you seeing?
Yeah, thank you. So as regards expectation for, as regards AfriInvest expectation for the June inflation number, which is to be released in the coming days, we think that the year-on-year price reading will still track higher, surprisingly, right? TU, they're expecting it to moderate. We're expecting about 25 basis point increase at the base case scenario to about 34.3%. But based on our model suggestion, right, we think that the June inflation print, the uptick in June, might likely be the breaking point for the persistent rise that we have been experiencing for the last 18 months. We think that after June, should there be any major shock on the economy, we think that price levels should begin to moderate on year from July. But for June, we think it will track higher from 33.95 to 34.4%, largely driven by pressure, on both food basket and FX. In June, for instance, the FX at the official market lost about 1.4%. That will have a pass-through on general price level. We also observe that in that same month, agri output, of course, due to persistent insecurity in most agrarian communities, agri output prices went up. So the effect of this will tell on general price level, and we are not expecting anything short than a modest increase. In fact, we think the month-on-month reading will still be within the range of 2.1 to 2.4%. So which means that price level will remain elevated and perhaps slightly higher than the month-on-month reading in the prior month. So we don't see any moderation for June CPI numbers that will be published tomorrow or next tomorrow, whether year-on-year or month-on-month. But we think that we might have reached the inflection point for 2024 in terms of reading. We should begin to see a moderation barring a major shock.
Yeah, should actually release that data sometime today. I'm definitely looking out at a website for it. But, in your opinion at this point, where do you see inflation actually peaking, in Nigeria? Is this something we should even start thinking about right now? Yeah,
so if there is no any major shock, we think that this June number that is set to be released will be the peaking point for this year, barring any major shock. So given the fact that we have a very high base from last year, since it said the inflation reading this one will be the 18th month of increase, so which means that inflation has been on the uprise since January 2023. So given that low base and the fact that month-on-month increases are beginning to slow down since February, when we last had it at 3.12. So we think that June number that is coming will be the peaking point, but that may not translate to improve purchasing power to an average household, which is where the question is, which is the most important aspect, because the moderation in year-on-year we're expecting will likely be driven by base year impact. But by and large, we think that with other programs that the government are planning to initiate, especially around food prices, we think that may support inflation to track down beginning from July, and perhaps we think that we might see it dropping to about 29% level by December, which should bring average for the year to around 32%.
All right, definitely hoping for some kind of soft landing for this second half of 2024. But we know the MPC, they're going to meet again, and they're going to set the rates, definitely. What are you seeing? Because this is going to be data-driven at this time. What are you expecting for the next move by the MPC to actually tame inflation?
Yeah, so the MPC committee is expected to sit by the end of this month. Now, looking at our expectation for the June inflation reading, which we think will still move higher, we don't see the MPC cutting rates. So the probability of them also holding rates at this current level of 26.25 is about 60 to 40. 60 to 40 in the sense that we are beginning to see favorable dynamics in the external market. For instance, last week, the U.S. Inflation number was published, and it printed lower than anticipated, so which has further raised hope that the Fed might be thinking around rate cuts, maybe if not July, maybe in September. So if the external environment is beginning to look very favorable for Nigeria in terms of opportunity for carry trade or capital inflow, then we think that what the CBN might likely do as a probability is that they will keep rates steady at the current level. But should inflation print for June come in worse than 34.2 to 34.5, then the CBN might actually consider maybe another 50 basis points increase, so that it will help support expectation that inflation should begin to cool from July. But by and large, we think that if there will be any further increase this year in terms of MPR, this July meeting will mark the end, because all the parameters are suggesting that inflation should moderate, but the rate of moderation will depend on what the June reading is and what the general macroeconomic environment is looking like. If there is no major shock on FX such that it spiraled again to around 1,009 like we saw earlier in the year, then the CBN should not have any reason, the MPC committee rather should not have any reason to tighten rate further beyond July. So by and large, if there will be any tightening at all, we don't see any rate cut on the horizon, but if there will be any tightening at all, we think that we won't have more than a 25 basis point to 50 basis point, and that will largely be informed by higher print of CPI for June, right, above 34.5%. So below that, then the CBN will adopt a policy hold.
Right. Well, I wonder how much wiggle room the MPC have at this point. But thank you so much. Always great having your perspective. Damilare Ashimi is a macroeconomic strategist at AfriInvest. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, let's get a quick check now on the close there for the local bonds last week. That was a 0.35% down for the week. Sub 100,000 for the all-share index, and we see about 139 billion wiped out from the market just last week. So it's a brand new week, and definitely be looking out for how the local bonds actually performs this week. That's it from me on Business Morning. We'll give you a summary of today's close later on. I hand things over now to the Sunrise Daily team.